Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Golden Gopher Hour podcast. My name is Dylan Callan Crowley, publisher at Gophers Nation of the On3 Network. I'm joined by my co-host, Tony Liebert of Bring Me the News. Tony, how are you doing today? It's only been, 48 hours since we last talked, but how are you doing on this Wednesday evening?
I'm doing great. Well, one game closer to one of the best, or one day closer to one of the best rivalries in college football. So can't complain.
Absolutely. Minnesota 5-2, 3-1 in Big Ten play takes on the Iowa Hawkeyes this weekend, who are also 5-2, 3-1 in Big Ten play with the Floyd of Rosedale on the line. One of the, like I said, one of the best rivalry games in all of college football. Obviously, it's been a game that Iowa had the, has had the advantage for the better part of the last decade plus. But the Gophers 2 years ago did go into Iowa City, nabbed the win, was able to bring home Floyd to the Twin Cities. They lost the last year at home, and now they're trying to go back into Iowa City for a second straight time and pull off a win. We're going to talk everything about this game, key matchups, key players to watch, and much more. I guess setting the scene here, Tony, last time I checked, this spread was at 8.5 points in favor of Iowa. I'm going to briefly check here just to make sure we got the most accurate line. But I think when and it is still at 8.5, but when we were discussing this our show Monday, we both feel like that 8.5 point spread is a little bit too high for these two teams. I think I'm not sure if it's the bookmakers undervaluing the Gophers or them overvaluing the Hawkeyes maybe after that Penn State win. But before we get too deep into it, do you still feel that this spread at 8.5 points is a little bit too much?
Yeah, I think any Gophers fan obviously would see that and say that number's too big, but I feel like the bookmakers probably just don't have a good read on this Gophers team right now. I mean, they were favored at Cal and then they lose that game. And the Rutgers game, there was a little more left to be had after that one. And the Purdue game, they obviously did not cover in that one. Um, but and then the Ohio State game they got destroyed, and so it's just like I don't think the bookmakers know exactly what they think about this Gophers team. It was a big line last week against Nebraska, and then they really dominated them the whole game. So
Yeah.
I think I'm buying into the trends we saw in that game. At least to the point of thinking that they can keep it closer than 8.5 in this one. I've tried to, I guess, figure out why the bookmakers are that high on Iowa, but I feel like it might be an overreaction to their win against Penn State and an
Sure.
underreaction to Minnesota's against Nebraska.
I think that's completely fair, and I do agree. Notably, since PJ Fleck took over the Minnesota program, five of the games between the Hawkeyes and Gophers have been decided by 7 points or less. So that does play in favor of maybe the spread being a little bit too high. The good news for the Gophers, perhaps, is that the spread is on paper, and football games aren't won or lost on paper. So we can talk about this game now a little bit more in depth. Um, I guess we'll start with when the Gophers have the football, and we talked about this on Monday, so we don't have to go terribly in depth here. But I think we both agree if the Gophers are going to win this game, it's going to come down to being the more physical team in the trenches on both sides of the ball, which obviously they did really well last week in doing. But I feel like that was the first time really we saw them this season um, truly have that type of performance on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what the Gophers' strategy is in this game. I mean, dating back, I guess the last 4 to 5 matchups, when it was still Tanner Morgan under center and then Ethan Kaliakmanis. The Gophers were clearly just a run-heavy team in those games, so they leaned on the run in those games. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I know they weren't passing the ball much. And
Right.
this year's obviously been a little bit different. But we saw last week that they got Darius Taylor going, and they might have found something with this offensive line, and they're going to have to run the football well to win this game. I'm curious to see how much and how creative they get in the passing game. Is it just quick hitter stuff? Do they try to take any deep shots? I mean, Iowa's a team that it's hard to do that on, and that's where you can get in trouble and maybe fall into a trap with a turnover or something. And then Iowa sure knows how to take advantage of that. But I think that's an aspect that many people won't point out right away because they'll say it'll be this game will be won within the trenches, but I think the Gophers might behoove them to mix in the pass a little bit, and I'm curious to see how that looks on Saturday afternoon. I think you're muted.
Thank you. This is a Iowa pass defense that can be um, exploited to a degree. I mean, you look earlier this season, they won one of these games, they lost one of these games, but Rutgers, Ethan Caligmanis against them completed 24 or 40 passes for 330 yards. Iowa still won that game, but then 1 week later against Indiana, uh, Mendoza completed 13 of 23 passes for 233 yards and 2 touchdowns. He averaged 10.1 yards per attempt that game and had a 161 quarterback range. So it is you there. This Iowa pass defense is able to be beaten with quality quarterback play and wide receivers, and I feel like for the first time in a while, perhaps that Minnesota has a full complement of wide receivers that they can, use against this physical Iowa defense, especially, Iowa loves playing physical man-to-man coverage quite a bit. I think the Gophers have the talent and size at wide receiver this year to perhaps, to be able to take advantage of this Iowa pass defense compared to the last few seasons, perhaps.
Yeah, I agree with that. Fernando Mendoza, obviously in the Heisman shortlist, probably a
Sure.
little different talent than Drake Lindsey.
Right.
And Ethan has more starts under his belt,
Yep.
and guy like Rocco Becht early in the year where one of those Iowa losses came, a little more experience, but
Sure.
I agree with you. I don't think this is as daunting of an Iowa defensive as we've seen. They don't have a Cooper DeJean in the back end of the defense or a
Yep.
Desmond King. I guess that's a pretty ways back, but maybe I don't know. Amani Hooker, former Park Center High School in Minnesota guy. I just naming Iowa defensive backs now, but yeah, I don't think this is. They're obviously a top 25 defense, maybe
Sure.
top 10, top
Yeah.
15. That's semantics at this point, but I don't think that's this like the defense had in like 2020 or 2021 where they're just putting up more points on turnovers than they are offensively. I don't think that's the type of defense this year. So the Gophers should at least think that there's some holes to exploit.
Yeah, it feels like a defense. I think you put it well. It just feels like a defense that obviously it's a very good defense. The statistics are what they are. I mean, they've only allowed two teams to go over 300 yards of total offense this season. And they kept Indiana to only 20 points and 5.4 yards per play, which you look at what Indiana's done outside of that, that's really impressive. But yeah, it doesn't feel like an overly dominant Iowa defense. It's a very good one. It's a fundamentally strong one, but it's not one that's littered with playmakers. You're not necessarily fearing them, recording, uh, you know, 3 or 4 turnovers in a game, having a pick six or uh, anything like that. They've been good in the turnover category, but they haven't been great. Only 8 turnovers in 7 games this year. So just obviously a little over one per game. But yeah, it definitely doesn't feel like one of these super scary Iowa defenses that they've had, uh, you know, over the last 5, 6 years. Obviously, Phil Parker is a great defense coordinator. I'm sure he's going to give Drake Lindsey a lot of different looks in this game that he has not seen yet. Uh, he loves to do that to young quarterbacks. We saw him do that with Penn State's Ethan Grunkemeyer last week, who was in his first career start. Now, obviously, Drake is a little bit more experienced in that, but Phil Parker is going to be very, uh, I think, choosy when it comes to when he's gonna, mix things up, when he's gonna call blitz. He doesn't blitz a ton, but he's gonna pick his spots pretty well in this game, I think, to try to throw Drake Lindsay off the most. But I do think there is an opportunity for the passing attack here to have a quality day, but I don't think that's going to mean much if the Gophers aren't able to find something on the ground. They don't have to be able to run the ball consistently, but they're going to have to get yardage here and there.
Yeah, this is a game I could see them using a little more of Darius Taylor in the Wildcat formation. I know we've seen that at times this year, and maybe they get even more creative in the running game, give some more touches to Fama Ejeboy was something that I would, I guess, do if I was Greg Harbaugh Jr. in this offensive
Yep.
staff. He's a guy that's looked great every time he gets the ball in his
Hmm.
hands. And in a game like this, when there's going to be a lot of runs, there's not going to be many pass attempts on either
Sure.
side. You want to throw different bodies out there, and you don't want to give Darius Taylor 35 touches in this game. I think as much as you want to give him as many chances to break a long one, we've seen that he's not the most durable running back in the
Right.
country, but I think this might be a game where we see a little more Cam Davis, maybe in the passing game, see a little more of Ejeboy, and get creative. And I doubt we see Coy Parrish on offense. We haven't seen that since week 3, but
Yeah.
maybe this is a game where you throw him in there for like a play or two in a unique formation, try and catch him off guard,
Even
something
a,
they haven't
a
seen.
trick play where he can get behind the defense, just I think if you're Greg Harbaugh Jr., this is a game where, uh, and even if you're Iowa, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a trick play or two in this game because we both think it's going to be a low scoring game, most likely. Uh, I could see them going into their bag of tricks to find a big play in this one.
Yeah, I totally agree. Um, I guess there's been some criticism at times when the Gophers have done that, but
Mhm.
they're going into a hostile environment. They're kind of counted out in this game. Big spread by the odds makers, like we mentioned. I think this is the time to do it, and obviously you have to do it at the right time. But uh, they talked about being delusional before the year, and I
Mhm.
think these are the moments where you kind of just go in with nothing to lose, and if you win this game, it just opens up the season. And I think they need to know that they have the guys to win this game, but they
Mhm.
need to steal as many possessions as they can.
Yeah, I think seeing Cam Davis in this game could be especially interesting just because he is a little bit of a bigger running back in terms of obviously not huge, but a little bit more compact of a running back. He could be valuable in those short yardage situations in this game because there are going to be plenty of, you know, second and three, second and two, third and two, even fourth and one, fourth and two situations that the Gophers are going to have to convert on if they're going to win this game. Because in this game, more than anything, I think it's all about uh, controlling the time of possession, staying ahead of the sticks, obviously, and extending drives as much as you can. Because I think not only are points going to be, at a minimum of this game, but I don't see a ton of drives either. There'll probably be a handful of 3 and outs in this game, but I think both teams are gonna try to drain the clock a lot, when they do have the ball in this one, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's only between these 2 teams, 12, 13, 14 drives total.
Yeah, that's just how this series works.
Yeah,
I think last year was more of an anomaly than a trend in terms of Iowa coming out and just dominating the whole game. Um,
sure.
I I think PJ Fleck has figured out how to be competitive against a Kirk Ferentz led football team.
Yeah.
It's another argument to win those games, but I think he knows what it takes at this point of his career. And I think we'll see that on Saturday with another close game.
Worth noting, with the Iowa run defense, since allowing 2.3 yards per carry in their Big Ten opener against Rutgers, they allowed 2.7 against Indiana, 3.5 against Wisconsin, 3.8 against Penn State. Now, all very good numbers, obviously, but it has slowly crept up the last few weeks. Perhaps that's just I mean, Wisconsin obviously has not been a very good team this year, but perhaps that's just the quality of running backs they face. Perhaps over the last few weeks, opposing offenses have started to pick up on some cracks in the Iowa run defense and have been able to exploit them a little bit more. But that is definitely something worth remembering as we head into Saturday, is that this Iowa run defense has allowed incrementally a little bit more yardage each week. And if you're the Gophers, you don't need to be averaging 4 or 5 yards of carry in this game. I mean, really, all you need to be averaging is 3.4 yards. Three carries at 3.4 yards, you're going to first down. So that should be uh, not the magic number, but the main point I'm trying to say here is that it doesn't have to be these huge chunk plays over and over again. They just have to get a little bit of push up front so Darius Taylor or whomever is carrying the ball can pick up, 3, 4 yards at a time. You just can't have a ton of 0 or negative yard carries in this game, which has been a problem for the Gophers this season.
Yeah, I agree. That's something that I think most of every average football fan doesn't realize how important it is to avoid the -3, the -4 yard rushes, and really how like common they are in a game like this where Iowa just schemes up a better defensive play and they know
Yeah.
it's coming and they just blow up the run play and then boom, it's
Yep.
2nd and 14 and then you're kind of in a passing situation. So
Right.
um, if the Gophers are able to avoid those and always just keep moving the ball and
Yeah.
don't play on your back foot, then I think it'll be a different football game. You kind of have to be the aggressor. It's like a UFC fighter
Right.
almost like you can't be on your back foot all the time and look for that big shot. It's kind of the small blows over and over and over again that I think pay off in a matchup like this. And I think both coaches understand that. Obviously, Kirk Ferentz does, but I think PJ Fleck is beginning to figure out what it takes to win in these matchups, like I said earlier. And I think that's just the path to victory in a game like this. Just don't think there's a scenario where Minnesota comes out and blows the doors off them.
Mhm.
And it's just going to be one within the margins, and it, the margin for error is going to be thin, and
Yeah.
they just need to make one more play.
100% agree. Two things I quickly want to touch on with the offense before going to the defense. One, I'm not sure about you, but personally, I don't expect the atmosphere to really affect Drake Lindsay in this game. I know for a lot of people, redshirt freshman going into, he's only had two road starts before this week, um, at Cal and then at Ohio State. I think this is a bit of a more challenging situation than maybe both of those. Obviously, Ohio State's a great atmosphere, very tough place to play, but Kinnick, the proximity in which the fans are to the sidelines, and how loud that place gets, it could be an issue. But, you know, every time that, you go to a game with Drake Lindsay and it's been, well, you don't know how he's going to perform as a redshirt freshman, first this, first that. He has exceeded expectations. I'm not saying he's going to go out there and replicate what he did against Nebraska through the air, but I'm not concerned about him going to this game and being rattled. If he has a turnover, I'm not really concerned about him being rattled by that either. He's shown the ability to shake those off this season. So I do think, as much as a quarterback can be, I think Drake could be quite a bit of an X factor in this game, because a lot of quarterbacks in a situation would go into that game uh, probably with a little bit of nerves, could get rattled easily, but I just haven't gotten that sense from Drake yet in his short time as the starting quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I've been wildly impressed by his composure and his
Mhm.
poise, really more than anything at this point of his career. I mean, he just turned 20 before the season, and he has the maturity of like a multi-year starter.
Yeah.
And like obviously you don't want to overreact to the way these guys answer questions in press conferences and stuff,
Yeah.
but I think you can just see it on the field that he doesn't let the moment get too big for him. There was one moment in the Cal game where he made probably one of his worst throws of the year, and I could kind of tell that there's a period of that game where he was like, "Okay, like I've never done this before." Like he kind of looked like a redshirt freshman, but even getting blown out against Ohio State, I think he looked like a player that was ready for the moment in that game, and just the way he handles himself day to day, and he doesn't get too high, he doesn't get too low. But he is an emotional football player still that he gets into the game and he plays with like a passion.
Yeah.
Those are the things that are much harder to judge, obviously, than production on the field, but that's what I've just been so impressed by him in terms of the Rutgers game. Their backs were against the wall. He came up with a huge drive. The Purdue game, he came up with a huge drive. The Nebraska game, that 98-yard drive just flipped the
Yeah.
game on its head. And it just when this team has needed the moments, he's just shown up.
Yeah.
And this might be the toughest atmosphere he faces all year. I've been going into Autzen later in the year is obviously interesting,
Yeah.
but being that this is a rivalry game and a game that the Gophers are expected to be competitive, at least by their fan base, like if they get blown out in this game, there would not be a good vibe. So,
Right.
it'll be interesting to see how he reacts. But I agree with you. I expect the best.
And a side note there, you talk about Ohio State. Matt Patricia in that game threw a lot of different looks at at the Gophers. Drake Lindsey talked about in that game, their defense from the first drive of the game to the second drive of the game was completely different. I think what he saw in that Ohio State game, the learning lessons that he was able to take from that game could pay off big time in a game like this, as I was talking about with Phil Parker is that he's going to throw different looks. He's going to he's going to challenge Drake Lindsey in this game mentally, and I think that Ohio State game could pay off this Saturday for the Gophers in that aspect.
Yeah, it's kind of like a thing too. Like you take everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face,
Yep.
and like that was the biggest punch they're going to take all year.
Yep.
I think Ohio State's a better team than Oregon, and
Hmm.
that'll be an interesting game too. But it just like you saw the best team in the country, and you
Yep.
know where you sit, and I feel like that helps a team figure out where they are and what they need to get better at,
Sure.
especially when you have a stable coaching staff like the Gophers
Yep.
and a stable culture. Like when you're like a first or second year head coach and you don't really know your players, that's a little different. But the Gophers are such a cohesive team that I think that game quietly, I think, is going to help them a ton for the rest of the year.
I 100% agree. And just the last thing, very quick last thought I have offensively is I would not mind seeing the Gophers have a similar aggressive mindset this weekend against Iowa that we saw in that Ohio State game early on. Obviously, it backfired against the Buckeyes early when PJ when they went for it on 4th and 1 on the Buckeye side of the field, and I believe that was the second quarter. Can't remember off the top of my head. And obviously that backfired. But I think in a game like this, uh, being the aggressor could be another thing that pays off big time. I mean, Kirk Ferentz isn't necessarily a guy who's going to be super aggressive. So I think if you can be aggressive, steal, a couple extra plays, steal a possession perhaps, whatever it may be, I think that's also something that in a game like this can easily help, decide who comes out on top at the end.
Yeah, like what we were saying, like a trick play or
Yep.
maybe even a fake punt. That'd be a bold move. That's something PJ Fleck doesn't really do a
Right.
whole lot often, but
But that just reminds me, obviously, again, that did not go end well for the Gophers. But last year against Penn State, I mean, Penn State calls a really gutsy fake punt
yeah,
late in the fourth quarter that ultimately won them the game. If that backfires for the Nittany Lions, they lose the game. They may not go to the college football playoffs. So I mean, those are tough decisions that honestly, if it works out, you're a genius. If not, everybody wants to fire you at the end of the day. But um, I, I think being aggressive in this type of game uh, is also important.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I think the fan base has a strong opinion that, Fleck needs to do a better job of in
Mhm.
terms of, going for it on 4th downs and in games that you are underdogs, try and steal possessions and try and, go for it on 4th and goal and, try and steal possession
Yep.
points, and I think this is a game where they're gonna need to do that.
All right, let's talk about defense. We're not gonna. There's not as much to go in about on the defense, and it was funny. We had a time idea for the show, and we're already getting close to that. So um, that's fine. Talking about the defense, not as much. Like I said, the Gophers aren't gonna have to worry about Iowa throwing the ball a ton in this game. I mean, you look at the Iowa game logs. The most passes they've actually thrown this season were 38 passes against Indiana, so in a losing effort where they had a game they couldn't run the ball, and 31 times against UMass, where they won 47 7. They threw 25 times against Wisconsin, 24 times against Iowa State, another losing effort, and then 3 games under 20 passes. They'll throw the ball. They are more capable of throwing the ball this year than maybe in some previous seasons, but I would be surprised if they get beyond 20 passing attempts in this game. And it's not like they're going to be trying to take deep shots. That is not their game. A lot of their passing attempts here in this are going to be within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. Uh, I mean, I don't think we have to talk overly much about the Iowa passing attack against this Gophers secondary, even if it's beat up once again this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at, like, games in the past, like, this is not gonna be a game where, we see a whole lot of Darius Green or Jayonta McMillan or those extra defensive backs we were talking on, the episode earlier this week because Iowa plays an old school offense where there's just
Yeah,
not gonna be many receivers on the field. They're gonna use their tight ends, if anything, in the passing game, and it just the Gophers are gonna have to buckle up their chin straps and be the more physical football team,
yeah,
and, like, maybe Iowa gets one big play in the passing game, which swings it, but that's kinda just how this game works. They're
yeah.
not gonna be, like, dinking and dunking down the field and, running, like, high tempo offense or anything. It's
No,
gonna be a play here and there, and the Gophers need to be disciplined enough for when they try to take the 1 or 2 shots they do during a game, that they're ready for it, and I think, like we mentioned in the offensive portion of this, Coach Fleck has figured out that that's what the team needs to do in a game like this. Like, he knows what to expect, and I think even though Mark Gronowski might be one of the better quarterbacks they've had in recent years, I think their identity is still the same.
hmm
Even in year 2 with Tim Lester, like, there's a little more creativity probably and a little more different looks that they're gonna throw at Minnesota, but at the heart of it, it's the same Iowa that they're gonna lean on the run, they're gonna lean on the tight ends, and they're gonna
yeah,
try and be the more physical football team.
absolutely. And we talk about being physical in the trenches. The other place the Gophers are going to have to be physical this game is when it comes to tackling. Tackling's been an issue at times recently. They're going to have to, they're gonna have to bring their A game in the tackling department this weekend against the run, but also in those short yardage passes. You can't allow too many of those what should be 3, 4, 5 yard receptions to result in 10+ yards after the catch. Not that I don't think that's going to be an issue in the passing game this weekend, but especially against the run, these are a bunch of strong nose, north and south runners for Iowa. Your typical Iowa running backs, they're not going to be afraid to put down their head and try to run through you. So the Gophers are going to have to be physical in that department as well.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting wrinkle obviously is Iowa's historically had the NFL style QB where they
Yeah,
just draw it back and hand it off or
right.
pass the football, and Mark Gronowski really is not that. He's more of a Tim Tebow style. He's
Yep.
obviously not as good as Tim Tebow, but more of like a run first to set up the pass type of quarterback,
Yeah.
which is something that Iowa really hasn't had. Like Cade McNamara and Spencer Petras and CJ Beathard, they weren't that type of players. And Nate Stanley, they were more pocket passers. They obviously
Right.
weren't stepping back and having many dropbacks, but um, that extra wrinkle is, I think, what makes Iowa a tougher offense this year and years in the past. I mean, they are averaging, I think, their most points since 2020.
Yeah, this is
Um,
a
yeah,
Iowa offense averaging 29.9 points per game, so 59th in the country, and they're averaging 324 yards of total offense, 192 of that on the ground.
yeah, it begins and ends with Gronowski in the running
Yeah,
game, and it's there's just not much like nuance when you break down Iowa's offense,
yeah,
but it's the intrigue of the QB run that I think what fascinated me before the season looking at this Iowa team and thinking that they could be a dark horse college football playoff team. And I mean, if they make a long kick against Iowa State, they could be a top 20 football team right now with their only loss to number 2 in the country. So
right.
I think they are a dang good football team, but that doesn't mean the Gophers can't win this game.
Yep.
They they have the recipe to be competitive. I mean, you look at the series history and see the long streak of Iowa wins, but um there are just a couple plays in those games. If they go in the other direction, I think Minnesota wins those games. So it's just I think Gronowski is an interesting wrinkle because it's something Minnesota hasn't seen. And it's just like I close my eyes and think of this game, and I could see a scenario where Gronowski just completely burns him on the feet. I mean, they struggled tackling Ryan Brown in that Purdue game.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see what their game plan is.
And the other thing with Gronowski is he's been banged up a lot of the season. He wasn't able to use his legs well for most of the season. Last week was the first time we really saw a mostly healthy Mark Gronowski. And maybe it was just that Penn State wasn't ready for him to be as effective as he was. It was a combination of poor tackling as well. Combination of also not having a QB spy, which has hurt Penn State multiple times this year. But with him being healthy, that just adds to it now. He is definitely a guy that if they're not careful about, he is going to be able to, rattle off a 15, 20, 30-yard run. Danny Collins talked about that today, is that the number one priority for the Gophers defense today is to always be keeping their eyes on Gronowski. Uh, and yeah, I think you said it perfectly with his legs. It adds a whole different wrinkle that the Gophers really haven't had to, worry about with the hot guys in the past. Because not only were there guys pocket passers, most of our guys had no mobility at all in the
Yeah.
pocket. And Gronowski, not only can he take off and run for big yards, but that also means if needed, he can extend plays out of the pocket if they're trying to take one of those deep shots downfield in this game. So it's definitely going to be a big game for linebackers are going to have to be smart in this game when it comes to their uh, assignments and being fundamentally sound. But it's also going to be, I think, pretty big for the defensive end and rush ends in this game to, kind of set those edges and not allow Gronowski to get to the outside, try to funnel him inside if he is trying to take off, where you can get help from the interior defensive linemen and the linebackers.
Yeah, I mean, I just wrote something about this today. I think Mariano Sori-Marin, the Gophers' new linebackers
Mm.
coach, former linebacker himself for the program, first year as a position coach. He has the linebackers playing at a pretty high level. Devin Williams is a guy who really he's shown flashes throughout his career, but he's just playing his most consistent football he has been since he got into the program. And Maverick Baranowski, I think, has made some improvements from last year. And Emmanuel Carmo hasn't been on the field a ton, but when he
Yeah.
is, he looks like a future star.
Yes.
And I think those three guys are going to need to come up in this game. come up big. I don't know how much Carmelo played, but obviously Williams and Baranowski are two of the most important players on the defense in this game, and they played at a high level all year. So that's why another reason why I think this game can be competitive is the Gophers' front seven has played well.
Yeah,
We obviously saw it at its best last week against Nebraska, but the interior has been not as good as I thought it was gonna be, which is
sure.
interesting because I mean, Jalen Logan Redding's kinda struggled this year,
Yeah.
and Rashawn Lawrence, I believe, outsnapped him last week against Nebraska.
Yeah, he's been, his snap counts have been pretty similar, for the last few games.
Yeah, and it's gonna be in the trenches there with Eastern, with, Logan Redding, Rashawn Lawrence, and the linebackers, like we said. We know Anthony Smith, Jackson Howard, Carter Menz, they can all rush the passer and contain on those outside runs, maybe on those plays where Gronowski's looking to extend it. But it's that interior that's going to need to show up, and we've seen it at times, but they're going to need to be at their best.
Yeah, and you also, of course, anytime you face a team like this, run the ball, uh, it is a total defensive effort. Kerry Brown and Coy Parrish are going to have to be very good at coming downhill against the run in this game. Coy has struggled a little bit at missed tackles this season, so he's going to have one of his better games this season. This is honestly a game where, if we talked about on Monday, the Gophers are probably gonna need him to come up with either a big return in this game or some sort of, big play defensively, which, in a game like this, 2, 3, 4 plays are likely gonna be the decider in a game like this. So they're gonna need them to play well. And one of the more underrated aspects of good run defense is your quarterbacks playing well against the run. So that'll be something to watch. But yeah, I think, like you said, it begins with those linebackers, and it begins with Devin Williams and Maverick Baranowski. Yeah, I'd say not really concerned, but Baranowski at times over the last few weeks has been getting banged up. It feels once or twice per game. So that'll be, I guess, something to watch here, because the Gophers are going to need him to play, uh, you know, 95% of the snaps, in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just kind of to wrap up all three phases, the
Yeah.
special teams are going to play a huge role in this game, like you mentioned. And if you look at the close games in this matchup, last year obviously wasn't close, but the three before that, they kind of just come down to the most like nonsense play. If it's a fumble or obviously the Cooper DeJean fair catch, invalid fair catch signal. Um, it's always something like that, and that's why I think it's just the more disciplined football team and the better coach team wins this game,
Yeah.
more times than not. And special teams, I think, is such a good example of a football team that is locked in on practice and taking every like rep is accurate and strong as they can. And there's no reason to think the Gophers can't do that, but that's kind of what Kirk Ferentz has built the Iowa program on. It's not shooting themselves in the foot. The Gophers have not done that this year at all, but it comes down to penalties. It comes down to flipping the field on the punts. Comes down to the turnover battle. Comes down to making all your field goals. If you miss a field goal, it's gonna
Yeah.
really put you behind the eight ball because it obviously if it's a long one, it gives you a short field, or if it's just a miss, that's a empty possession. So, it's stuff like that that's going to determine this one.
I 100% agree. And, I think we mentioned him briefly on Monday, but the Gophers are going to have to be aware on special teams about Caden Wetchen, probably butchering the last name, but he's a wide receiver for them, but he also is their primary punt and kick returner, averaging 32.8 yards per punt. I mean, sorry, per kick return this year. Um, and then, even more impressively, 12 punt returns for 311 yards, an average of 25.9 yards per punt return. He has a kickoff return for a touchdown and a punt return for a touchdown. He's a guy who can change this game, with the best of that Iowa's had back there. So I mean, if there's one player to watch on this Iowa offense, defense, or special teams, it's him. The Gophers gonna have to be very careful with them. It's gonna, this is a big game. I think, where Tom Weston has to kind of be, the um, a a secret weapon for the Gophers. He's gonna have to, have strong punt after strong punt. He's gonna have to punt it away from Wetchen. If you can, get these punts towards the sideline where he, is gonna get trapped between a couple Gophers coming downfield on the sideline, I think that's gonna be beneficial. But I don't think you want to be punting to him directly too many times in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you, and I guess that's kind of the reason why I lean towards Iowa winning this game. Is while I do think Weston is a talented punter, and there's been times where he looks like a weapon. There have also been some questionable punts,
Sure.
and Brady Denenberg has missed a few kicks this year, and the Gophers have not been horrible on special teams by any means, but they've not been perfect. And
Mhm.
it's just in those margins right now, I think it's hard for me to trust them. I think the Gophers are going to have an opportunity to win this game, but it just comes down to I've seen Iowa do it more times, and
Yeah.
I don't think these teams are 8.5 points apart like the line suggests. So I expect a closer game, but I think we see Iowa sneak away maybe like 21-18 or 21-17,
Yeah.
game like that where it comes down to a field goal or a play at the end of the game.
Talking about kicking, then we'll go into our wrapping this up with our predictions and such. But g- good calling out on the kicking there. Brady Danberg is 3 for 3 in the last 2 games. But my biggest concern with him, and it's been my concern all season, is while he's reliable within 40 yards, you push it out to 40, 45, 50 yards. He just hasn't in his career shown the ability to do that consistently. He does have a 46-yarder this season against Purdue, but that was his first 40-plus yard field goal since 2023. For his career, he's just 4 for 6 from within 40. He's never hit a field goal beyond 50 yards. You flip to the other side, Drew Stevens, while he is 2 for 5 from 40 to 49 this year, he's 3 for 4 from 50 plus yards. He had 4 50-yard kicks last year, 2 the year before that. The Gophers, it's hard to feel that confident that you're getting points on a field goal attempt. It's hard to feel confident in any field goal attempt that's beyond, let's say, 43, 44 yards right now with Denenberg, just because he hasn't shown that reliability. Stevens, yeah, he's had a little bit of a tougher year this year, 14 for 19 total, but he's still proven to be more of the more reliable kicker in his career. And that extra, you know, 10, 15 yards of range that he has could be what decides this game, like you said.
Yeah, I mean I completely agree with you. What prediction you got for this one?
Yeah, I got a low scoring one. I'm going Iowa 17, Minnesota 16. I think the Gophers are gonna. I wouldn't be shocked if the Gophers are leading this late in the game. But I have too many questions how about special teams slash what we saw last week is sustainable going forward. Just because that was the first time we really saw the Gophers be dominant in the trenches on both sides of the ball. They had a poor game defensively on the ground against Purdue, turned it around, had a really good game last week. Now they're facing a good Iowa offense with a talented dual threat quarterback. It's just too many variables right now for me to really feel confident about the Gophers winning. I wouldn't be shocked if they did, but I'm going to take the Hawkeyes with the home field advantage to win this one. Yeah, I'm going to say on a last second field goal.
Yeah, yeah, I think we're on the same page that there's going to be a moment in this game where it swings one way or the other, and it's just going to come down to who comes on the other side. I mean that's not this nuance breakdown of the game, but it just sometimes that's what football is, and it's whatever team's ready for that moment.
100% agree. And the last thing I want to throw out about this game, and you can tell you've been around this program much longer than me, but I feel like when PJ Fleck took over in 2017, the Gophers were behind the Hawkeyes and the Badgers. And let's be honest, at the end of the day, the two games Gophers fans care about more than any other is these two games in the season. You can ask an Ohio State fan what game they care about the most. It's the game. If the Buckeyes lose 11 games, but they win the game, they don't care about those other 11 games because they won the games. Gophers fans want to win these two games every season. Since PJ has taken over, the Gophers have since overtaken the Badgers. You can say some of that is because of the Badgers' own deficiencies and their own issues. But there's no doubt that right now, Minnesota has become a better football program right now than Wisconsin. I feel like this is a measuring stick game for the Gophers in the aspect of 2 years ago, you went into Iowa City, you beat the Hawkeyes, a big win for the program, especially with how Iowa's dominated the series over the last since the turn of the millennium. Yes, last year you got your butt kicked a little bit at home, but if you can go in Iowa City and win again this season, to me that shows that the Gophers, and like you said, with PJ figuring out how to play this Iowa team, how to beat a Kirk Ferentz coach team, how to play a Kirk Ferentz coach team, if the Gophers can go into Iowa and beat the Hawkeyes again, win 2 out of 3 matchups, go in Iowa City back-to-back times and win, I think that says that could be a pretty big moment in the PJ Fleck era of, you know, yes, it's been a long journey to this moment, but I think if they win this game, it could be I don't want to say a turning point, but I just feel like it could be a pretty big moment for the program, especially under Fleck and what he's built so far. If they can go to Iowa City and claim another this season, and it would be just another good sign of what he's built at Minnesota and the direction that this program is headed in. Uh, because if you could take over Wisconsin in the hierarchy, and then you could take over Iowa. And now 2 games doesn't mean you've jumped
Yeah,
them,
yeah.
but 2 out of 3 years would be certainly a pretty marketable improvement than what the Gophers have done for the most part over the last you know uh, 2 decades. I know they won in 2010 and 2011, but outside that, they haven't had much success within back-to-back years or within 3 year spans. If
Yeah,
that
I
makes
mean,
sense.
yeah, you said it best. I mean, Minnesota is going to be judged against Wisconsin and Iowa as long as those 3 programs exist. I mean, it's just in the Big Ten, like, Minnesota's not gonna be judged against Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, Michigan. Like, that's just the tier of the conference that they're in, and there's no reason that Minnesota can't be on the same level of program as Wisconsin or Iowa,
Correct.
and growing up in Minnesota my whole life, when I started watching college football in the early 2000s, it's Wisconsin was miles ahead of Minnesota, and seeing Wisconsin go to the Rose Bowl under Brett Bielema so many times, then a couple times under, uh, Paul Chryst, it seemed almost impossible to think that the Gophers were gonna be able to surpass them as a program, and it did take a little bit of Wisconsin's deficiencies, probably more than people were expecting when they hired Luke Fickell, but,
Sure.
in terms of Iowa, it's they're closing that gap, the games are competitive,
Yeah.
and you look at the record, you look at last year's game, you might not think it's that close, but I think it's really close, and there becomes a point where you have to show it with wins, though, and
Right.
they did it 2 years ago, and if they I agree, if they do it this year, I don't think they've won in Iowa City back-to-back trips since 1979 and
Yep.
1981,
Correct.
so, that would be a huge statement to do that. I mean, Fleck said today that he thinks Kinnick Stadium's the hardest place to play in the country. And if you can win in that place 2 times in a row, that's a huge statement. And I mean, we talked about last week a little bit or earlier last episode about big picture stuff. And I mean, if you
Yeah.
win this game, it just that's when you can start really having the conversations of playing in like a January bowl game, maybe like in the ReliaQuest Bowl or the Citrus Bowl, or then you get the optimistic fans talking about that Oregon game, and you're like, man, could they go 10-2? And that's a whole different discussion. But
Sure.
Um, you got to beat your rivals. That's just what college football is.
Right.
And if the Gophers go 8-4 with wins over Iowa and Wisconsin, I think 99% of the fan base would think that is a great season.
Absolutely. And yeah, I just thought that was as I was doing some stuff today. I was driving around. I was thinking about that aspect of this, and yeah, I'm glad you understood where I was going for, and just that I think it's a very underrated aspect of this game that it's kind of a measure and stick moment for the Gophers and the direction of this program. And yeah, you talk big picture, 100% agree, and definitely it's one step at a time, but also in a ever evolving Big Ten where you know Minnesota, I think, is already if they finish this season strong, I think Minnesota definitely enters that tier of the Big Ten where they shouldn't be ranked going into seasons, you know, between 13 and 18. I think they would certainly be up near that any given season. They could be ranked going into the season anywhere from 12 up. I think that's where the program is right now, especially if they finish strong. But if you can beat Iowa, I mean, that's just a big statement of where this program is in the Big Ten hierarchy. And with an ever evolving college football, perhaps another expansion of the playoffs down the road, it's I think if they win this week and you can start seeing, you know, kind of bigger picture dreaming long term about what this program could be. And, a lot of fans in college football, I feel like today think it needs to be an immediate type success, but I think PJ has shown if they do win this week that it sometimes it's incremental year by year. But yeah, I just think that's a really underrated aspect of this weekend's game going into it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it well. I think you laid down what's on the line.
All right. Well, any final thoughts on that? I mean, another 50-minute episode. I do appreciate everybody listening to us, but like I said before, I'd rather have a longer than expected episode and have a strong football discussion than, you know, cut out a good discussion and go 30 minutes. So I do appreciate everybody listening again. I thought we had a great discussion today.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think the Floyd of Rosedale is one of my favorite trophies in the country, as regardless as a college football fan. So, I think it should be another fun game this week, and it should be some classic old school Big Ten West football.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for listening to another episode of the Golden Gopher Hour. My name is Doug Callan Corley. Once again, you can find me over at um, Gophers Nation of the On3 Network, where we have plenty of inside scoops, especially on the recruiting trail for the Gophers. And Tony, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find all my stuff on Twitter at Tony Liebert, and then over on Gophers on SI on the World Wide Web. You can find all our articles over there.
Awesome. Thank you everybody for listening once again. We'll be back at it. Uh, perhaps Saturday, perhaps Sunday. We'll figure out the best time for us to jump on, but we'll have a full recap of this weekend's matchup against Iowa. And perhaps we'll be talking about the Gophers taking that next step against their rival and bringing home Floyd. So we'll have to wait and see. But till then, everybody have a good rest of your week. Enjoy the game, and we'll talk to everybody soon.